I have been champing at the bit for a horror-flavored Stardew Valley kind of game, and Grimshire, as cute and wholesome as its art style makes it look, is absolutely that. If you enjoy this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment down below telling me your experience with the game. Now, Grimshire is in early access at the moment, and only the first year is playable, so there is plenty to expect down the line, as over the course of that first year, several events happen at set times to push the story along. I'm very intrigued by it so far, and I appreciate that there's a more pressing motivation behind the gameplay than it just being another farming sim, because while Grimshire is exactly what it looks like on the surface, a cute farming sim with a world inhabited by anthropomorphic animals, furry Stardew Valley, it's much more than that. Don't get me wrong, you do spend most of your time tending to your farm, foraging seasonal plants in the wilderness, catching fish, and digging up useful material in the mines, but there's a problem. And it starts right at the beginning. I'm going to spoil the general beats of year 1, so if you're already intrigued, I highly recommend supporting the devs and getting the game, because it's devoured all my free time this last week, so yeah. See, you aren't from the little village of Grimshire. You are from the capital. You and an unnamed goat woman are saved by a stoat called Finn, who brings you on his boat just as chaos breaks out across the city, bathing it in flames and smoke, making it hard to see what's going on. All we know is that something terrible has happened. Thankfully, we're more exhausted than hurt and just need to sleep it off, but the other survivor is in a bad way. She was severely injured before Finn got to her, and it's noted that her injuries consist of scratches and bites all over her body. Initially, I thought she was going to be a source of infection in the town, but no, she succumbs to her injuries, whereupon the village burns her body at the top of the mountains, trying to offer some measure of dignity in death to a stranger who came to their shores nameless and suffering. It's from here that we're given an old farmstead that's been abandoned for years, another kindness the villagers didn't have to extend, but did in the knowledge that we probably don't have a home to return to. Then again, we're set to grow food for the village, so you can argue it's not entirely out of kindness. Still, we have a home and a job now. Shortly after, we have our first town project where the village decides how to deal with an issue. In this early stage, the resident healers, Hazel and Rose, want to make sure they're stocked up on materials, through building a herb garden or a mushroom hut, both for medicinal purposes. Since we're now in charge of the only arable land in the village, we're allowed to vote and end up as a tiebreaker on all issues going forward. At the end of the first week, Finn returns with confirmation that the capital has been destroyed, a smoking ruin of a city inhabited only by swiping claws and snapping jaws. The people have gone feral. There's a plague turning people into mindless beasts. The only saving grace seems to be their acute fear of water, which stopped them from reaching Finn when he sailed close enough to check the city for survivors again. So this is more 28 days later than Night of the Living Dead. To me, this sounded like an aggressive form of rabies, partially because the infected aren't reanimated bodies, but especially the hydrophobia, which is a key symptom of rabies, since the virus concentrates in the salivary glands, and water would dilute things, so it makes you terrified of even the suggestion of drinking. Aren't viruses horrifically clever? But Morgan, why do you call it an aggressive form of rabies? Doesn't rabies make you aggressive anyway? If you were unaware, there are two forms of rabies, furious rabies and dumb or paralytic rabies, with about an 70-30 split in human cases depending on who you ask. Why I call it an aggressive form of rabies, specifically of the furious kind, is because of how fast it seems to spread and how pronounced the aggression is. In a sentient creature, that is, a being that is capable of experiencing things through its senses, which is most animals, furious rabies causes them to act erratic and violent. They don't have the cognition to understand what's happening. They can feel that something is wrong, they can feel threatened, confused, and scared, so anything that comes near them is treated like a threat and they bite. For sapient life, beings with advanced cognition and awareness, so mostly humans, we don't get the luxury of blind panic. Why do I say luxury? Because furious rabies comes in waves. It ebbs and flows through episodes of heightened agitation, convulsions, restlessness, and between those episodes, you're fully cognizant of what's happening to you, how much it hurts, knowing you're going to die, and you're still able to coherently articulate all of it. Why do you know you're going to die? Because rabies is almost unilaterally fatal once symptoms start to show. Symptoms are often the sign that your body is fighting something, and is an obvious signal to the power sink in your skull that you should probably take some medicine or visit a doctor to help with it. Rabies has no such kindness. It creeps through your system silently until it reaches your brain, symptoms show, and by then it's too late. That's why when someone gets bitten by an animal, the first order of business is often a rabies shot, just in case. Because if you wait for rabies symptoms to show, you're already dead. So yes, people running around, chasing down victims, biting and scratching and trying to break into a fortified building for 10 days straight without exhaustion, instead of staggering around shadowboxing hallucinations and crying in terror, that's some turbo zombie rabies rather than regular. All of which is not remotely a criticism. The fact that it's rabies instead of corpse reanimation is in some ways scarier, and I think they could improve the unsettling factor of it tenfold by giving the infected moments of lucidity where they're painfully aware that something is horribly wrong with them, but they can't self-terminate or do anything to soothe their condition because the virus has rewired their instincts. Maybe we get reports of some infected crying, trying to force themselves to drink water but shaking so much they can't even get it in their mouth. Maybe some have muzzled themselves during their lucid moments and tied their hands so they can't take it off. Maybe they beg for help or beg to be killed, but coming near them either way is a hazard because who knows when they'll slip back into that mindless rage. Regardless, the actual creepiness of it all is fantastically done as is, since we only get an idea of what's happening to the world through Finn. He trades up and down the coast, visiting Grimshire once a week on Saturdays, and shares new developments with the town. I mentioned that the game gives us a more pressing motivation to do what we do. Well, you can imagine with a plague outbreak, the capital being razed to the ground, and every settlement either getting bodied or quickly becoming suspicious of strangers to avoid that, would interrupt trade a bit. Grimshire is a small village, its only farm has been abandoned for years, it relied on trade for a lot of its food, so our job becomes supporting the village by growing food, raising livestock, and helping stock up the community root cellar. Sounds simple, right? It does. And it is. Until this uppity little prick comes along with armed soldiers to demand a defender's ration for the Queen's army. The demand starts out at 3 days worth of food, then increases when the village refuses to let anyone be drafted into the Queen's army, even under threat of violence from the Mouse and his armed goons. Later into the year, the Mouse is driven off and replaced by a pirate crew, who start demanding increasingly unreasonable amounts of food. Now, I managed to keep everyone fed, but the game has different difficulties, and it is very, very possible for villagers to die if the situation gets dire enough. That added pressure and the mounting issues the town has to deal with, from crows ravaging the fields, a predatory critter threatening livestock, a sickly red tide killing the coastal fish, it all adds up to a situation that can go south with one bad decision. Do I love Stardew Valley to absolute bits? Yes. Do I also enjoy Grimshire for punching me in the chest at times? Also yes. Like, I definitely felt emotions when I played Stardew, but I never cried. I did cry very late in year 1 of Grimshire when the two children, Poppy and Jack, were sent away with Finn to keep them safe, because there was every possibility the village was about to get slaughtered by ferals. Their distressed little faces killed me. They didn't understand, and they shouldn't have to understand. No child should go through anything like this, and I'm glad that they didn't. Because the finale of year 1 isn't some action-packed last stand, it's an exercise in dread, in being stuck like an animal in a snare, trying to keep an eye on everyone as you huddle together in the temple, trying not to think about the endless banging and growling and scratching and howling as the ferals tirelessly attempt to get inside and rip us apart. It's watching as the villagers you've gotten to know over the year get increasingly ragged and frazzled, growing delirious, hopeless, blaming themselves for not doing more, pacing helplessly, rationing water, trying not to freeze as a blizzard blows in, asking you to help their loved ones escape because they intend to distract the ferals if they get inside. Until finally, there's nothing. It's silent. The blizzard has died down. There's no more banging and scratching and howling. A polite knock on the temple doors. It's Finn. It turns out that the blizzard kills off the ferals, freezing them against the walls like the most macabre grotesques. The village is battered, the houses are wrecked, and the people are deeply traumatized, but they're alive, and that's the important thing. I am deeply looking forward to how Year 2 plays out, and I'm curious to see how tough things are on higher difficulties, so there's certainly value in starting a new game. With that said, thank you for watching, and I will see you all next time. Thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment down below, whether it's a game you'd like to see me cover, what you thought about the one we just discussed, or to tell me about your pets. Special shout out to my patrons and YouTube members, who are all very handsome people, and if you'd also like to be called a very handsome people, you can support the channel through Patreon or become a member here on YouTube. Either way gets your name in the credits. If you're into live streams, you can catch me every Wednesday on Twitch at 8 PM British time. I can also be found over on Blue Sky and TikTok when I remember to post on either of those. All that being said, don't forget to drink your water, take your medication, be kind to yourselves, and I will see you all next time.